go above, to be safe, 200 million barrels per day. We'll never go above that. Everyone agrees on that. Maybe it's 100, maybe it's 95, I don't know, but you have an upper boundary. You can give a safe upper boundary for coal, you can give a safe upper boundary for uranium. I think every person on the planet would agree on a certain upper boundary. It's not 85 maybe, but it's not 200. I mean, it's not going to be above 200 million barrels a day for oil. So you can give for every energy source safe estimates. Yes, I believe that you can. That's right. I mean, you can work it out. Because reasonable assumption you can give upper boundaries. That would be your maximum energy consumption you can make, or energy you can make available every year. There's upper boundaries for that. And that wouldn't take 2,000 years to reach. That would probably take 100 or 200 years or something. So I haven't done those numbers, but yeah, you can do that. Sure. I mean, even the uranium people. So in Britain, for instance, so there have been studies by the British government because they're not sure whether they want to continue with nuclear power or not. They seem to be continuing, but they're not really committing yet. But it's this talk, that we will, but we'll do it, but not yet. And so anyway, they have these studies, and one of them is they have no uranium themselves, of course. So there's a concern about uranium supply and security of uranium supply. So the British government has done some studies about uranium supply, and they believe that this century we will peak in uranium supply worldwide. So I don't know if it's true, but these are the estimates. So even this century we will apparently peak in uranium supply, which is rather amazing. So if you were to build, if you believe that, and you were to build a new nuclear power plant right now like in Ontario, and these forecasts are correct, then during the lifetime of that power plant, which is now, the new ones they build, they want to refurbish it once and they want to run it up to like 60 or 70 years. You would actually go past the production peak of uranium. So you have to now begin to think what kind of, let's say the coal-fired power plants, by the way, they typically build a lifetime of sort of 40 years, right? And according to studies from German government as an example, coal production will peak within the next 20 years. It's interesting. So yes, you can do studies. Studies vary. You take the most pessimistic study, and everyone would agree on that one at least, as an upper bound. The time scale falls into the century, basically. Which is rather interesting. If you're born now, you might see a whole bunch of peaks. I don't know. Maybe not in solar PV yet, this century, but possibly.
I have another question. If you would come up with a new money system, so maybe we have something, how would we transit to that system? Wouldn't that mean that like everybody would run to the bank and wants his money out to transfer it into the new system? I mean,
yes.
How would that work?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I don't know, but it has been done at least, right? So I mean, at least partially with the greenback, for instance. The greenback was a valid currency as well as the dollar at the time in circulation. They were actually parallel currencies, if you like, coexisting, if you like. I mean, these are actual, because of some people think there's an imminent collapse of certain countries or even currencies, the euro, who knows. I mean, some people are actually thinking about this. You can read up what these people think. And some people think, well, that's a 3-day bank holiday, basically. On a Friday afternoon at 5, they will say, we'll open again on Thursday, next week. So there's 5 days for it, basically. And there is actual scenarios people play out. I mean, this is not the government themselves, but people think about that. How would you actually do it? Very interesting. And so I read one, for instance, someone wrote this. This was a German economist at a German university, a professor of economics. He published this thing. He said, this is how Germany can go back to the D-Mark in 5 days. And he published this whole thing. And practically with everything, it's like at airports you have to pat down everyone for like the whole thing. Like you close the borders, the whole 9 yards. To get a hold of all the currency, nothing else comes in, and so on and so forth. It's really fascinating. So some people are thinking about it, but I don't know myself. It would, I think, if you were to see it, who knows, right? One day, I don't know. Probably be announced on a Friday afternoon around 5 o'clock. That's honest to God. I really think that's what it is, and probably can't go do any banking for a few days. And I don't know if we can even use the credit card anymore or something. Who knows? Maybe you can do that, and I'm not even sure what that means, but chances are it's a Friday afternoon.
So this may be a country like that runs into default and then decides to do this as a last resort.
Yeah. I mean, practically one of the things in this article was that the German government would declare at 5 p.m. or 10 past, whatever, when the business closes and everything, the banks basically, then they would just make an announcement that Hereby, all deposits are safe. They will just be converted to the new currency as of next Thursday or something. That's it. So that no one panics and run to the banks, you know what I mean? So banks are closed anyways, but also to avoid the run on the bank. But that's very practical. This guy is a professor of economics. I mean, it didn't sound insane to me. Like, I mean, this person seems to be sane, and there was practical steps.
If it were working like that, so what would change then?
Sorry?
What would change between the old currency and the new currency? So you
I
say that everything is safe, right? So
yeah, I guess somehow the concern over defaults. I guess I'm not sure. By you know, if you how can I say, if you owe money and the currency is worthless in 5 days from now, literally, we can't be sued, right? Why pay a loan or something? You know what I mean? So they want to guarantee that all the loans will continue to be served. And so I think it's basically that.
but if there's no money actually, no real money in the system, how can that be guaranteed?
Yeah, I think to continue with economic activity is my understanding. Just to, you know, I mean, I'm not an economist.
And it comes back to what you were saying. Germany can back up on its manufacturing, which is not the case of Greece. So if you decouple Germany and Greece, because at the moment Germany has no money of its own. The euro is a kind of artificial money put on many different countries, and which is the reason why there is so many tensions. So you decouple German economy from the eurozone.
Okay, so there are sources of value of money and there are sinks of value of money. So
But that's a really good question to make it. I mean, how the transition really, if it was ever to occur, right? And, I mean, we've all seen these things where you just divide hyperinflation. Now you say, as of next Thursday, everything divided by a Brazilian or something. You know what I mean? You just, you know what I mean? That's not the problem you mean, of course, because you just, you know, can convert anytime you want, and it's all good. You really mean like new currency and maybe even a different system behind it. Right? Yeah, I know. I don't know the answer. It's fascinating. By the way, the debt-free currency, I had this somewhere on the slide. The problem is inflation again, believe it or not, right? I mean, if a government can create the money directly, debt-free though, but still the money, you want to win the next election, well, you just get some infrastructure going, right? You just print money and spend. So
I think that's an interesting question too, right? So, so there must be economic growth, right? To keep society stable. So, but in reality, I mean, it's not sustainable, right? So you must get to a mode of progress in society where there's no economic growth anymore, but maybe even like an adjustment, right?
yes.
So is that stable or can it be achieved in a democratic system?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. I mean, I don't think it doesn't seem to be stopping us from innovation, right? So you can still sit down in your lab and think and, you know, innovate new things, even though, say, the monetary supply was constant. So what? I just go back right now to my office and I invent something new, which might innovate us and progress us and so on. So it doesn't. So how do you really truly achieve a stagnant economy if people can keep innovating? It's a very interesting question, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the
Someone
answer.
was giving a similar presentation.
Yeah.
And he was actually saying within a democracy it's impossible.
Yeah. Okay. Nice one. So. One of the people in Canada, just to let you, in case you care about that particular question, that I don't obviously have no answer, not much of an answer to. Peter Victor is a prof at York University. He's an economist. He's big on that one. He always talks about stagnant economy, how to make it work. Anyways, so yeah, you know, he buys his book, I guess. Interesting person. Yeah, I don't know the answer. I really don't know. It's an interesting planet, right? So if we keep the population, if the population keeps growing, even if every person was doing, every person's economic activity was constant, say, but by growing population we still grow the economy, of course. So that is also something you have to keep in mind, of course, right? So I don't know the answer to that. Historically, of course, if you really look at human history, so civilizations have been rising, falling, and crashing, of course. So you might say, hey, we're all going to crash, whatever that means. I don't know, that's the outcome, I'm not sure. But then again, they were also all isolated, right? There was never one global kind of society.
I mean, there's one implication, right, in all of what is discussed, that there's a direct correlation between money in the system, right, or money spent, or economy growing, and standard of living, right? If actually that could be decoupled, then
yeah, I don't know how you do it like this, but I mean, there are basically steady state societies, and of course, less primitive, right? But you might call them steady state, more or less steady state, anyways. Certainly, the exponential growth function is like maybe it's still exponential, but it looks like linear. I mean, it's just a little. So there are kind of examples, but I mean, I can't think of a complex society that, that is stagnant. I cannot visualize that we're complex, right? Complex means we have computers, we're all connected, this will never go away, so we make certain assumptions, right? Some people make the assumption, even if we were to crash, whatever that means, we will still have the internet and the computers and all that stuff. It's one of those scenarios, right? Crashing just means, we're collectively poorer, more of us will do agriculture again, all those kinds of things, less specialized, we have more skills than now, not so narrow and all that. And maybe do some home gardening and all that stuff, but you could still have a BlackBerry or something, an iPod, I don't know, an iPhone or something, right? So that might still continue. So there are these different scenarios that at the fundamental level we keep innovating, and yet become simpler, and that seems like a contradiction, obviously, but that's interesting. I don't know. I once I gave a talk, and then this nuclear physicist at UIT said, I think we should take the Canadian Shield and write down everything we know in the Canadian Shield so it's not lost, you put it in the ground or whatever. It's like, 1,000 years from now we collapse, electricity is not there anymore, come on, they walk up and read up everything. We should start now. Bring it into the Canadian Shield. Well, that's kind of a good idea, but it's not practical. Because every other medium might be lost, right? So knowledge, in other words, my point is if you assume that we don't lose knowledge, how to do things, we seem to be losing it already. If you ask young kids, like, where does the milk come from, the supermarket, and all these stories, right? And what's this animal called? Well, I don't know, and well, it's a sheep. And so we're already losing some knowledge here, right? But if you think as a species we don't lose knowledge, and even if we, whatever you want to call collapse or something, we'll continue to gain knowledge. Maybe it's possible, I don't know. But what would that look like in a society if we still, like, we might still have universities and schools, we still learn, but become simpler? I don't even know what that means. Here's the question.
What is knowledge? And how can you measure it?
Well, what is knowledge is a good question.
I mean, you're discussing it, you might be able to define it. And how can you measure that actually?
Yeah, knowledge and things you've innovated, right? So all the technology you've ever innovated, you assume that you don't lose any of that technology. If anything, you progress with that technology, right? And that everything we've ever understood about society, nature, and the planet, we won't lose that knowledge either. If anything, we gain. At best, we're steady state. I don't know what knowledge is, but that's how I'll say. And you can use it, right? No doubt about that. You look at some civilizations when they disappeared, and then there was a dark age for 1,000 years, and like, what's that? What happened here? There's some civilizations that just went, and then in Spain, right? 1,000 years ago, they were doing complicated operations already, Some of the North Africans who invaded Spain, I went to this museum in Spain, and they showed what kind of complicated brain operations they did 1,000 years ago in Spain or something. They're trying. Probably died, I don't know. At least they're doing something. And then the Dark Ages, didn't do it anymore. What's happening here? So they lost knowledge. I don't know if we will. Some people are very optimistic, like, whatever happens, Peter, don't worry, because it's all stored on our drive, and whatever the argument is, we just keep progressing that way, and then it's just temporary and get through this, because they have this belief that we always just gain understanding. I don't know. Yeah, sure.
And that it's been a fascinating talk. I want to give a plug for the talk that's going to be on August 1st. Maybe Jeff Manders, who we were referring to, because he's going to talk, I think, about the relationship between global climate change and monetary policy. But he's an economic geographer.
Yes, well,
so he's going to look, I assume, I don't know what he's going to talk about, look more at the economy.
Okay.
But I hope you will be there.
I can't be there, it's too bad.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a conversation between the two of you.
Yeah. Another aspect is the monetary system, one thing, but the financial system, yet another discussion, right? So how to finance things, for instance. Even with the current monetary system, it's also an interesting debate, right? So anyway, so maybe, I don't know if he talks about monetary system or finance, it's a bit different, of course, but
political economists.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Because we often, yeah, sorry, no.
If all people or most of the people goes to the bank and asking for the money and they don't have the money,
Right.
or what happens? So they're printing more money in US, for example?
Yeah, the bank, I mean, if you literally begin to line up, the bank collapses, right? Because
Okay.
you have the right by law to get a deposit until there's no deposits anymore. But the bank still has obligations to meet themselves. The money is not there anymore because it was withdrawn. They can't meet the obligations, and then you would call it default, right?
Yeah, but you said that the government can print money.
Yeah, sure.
There's
Banks
stuff-
get, yeah, that's when you get the partial nationalization or full nationalization of banks. So typically over the weekend. So there was in England, for instance, fascinating documentary. Forgot the name of it. You can stream it on the web. So that was Northern Rock. That's right. When there was a run on Northern Rock, and it's people lining up, and then that weekend crisis meeting. Very interesting documentary, and. That was the few times, probably, according to this documentary, where the politician apparently was truly more powerful than the banker. That's very interesting. And it was called over a weekend on Saturday. Very interesting. I'll tell you very quickly. There's a finance minister at the time, forgot the name, English one, the British finance minister. So he called a crisis meeting, all the CEOs of all the banks had to come into this room right now. And they all came. And they placed it so they placed it in so that there was not much interaction. They couldn't go out and be distracted or anything. They put them under tremendous pressure. They worked through the night, they worked into the morning. There was no place to go anywhere to get food or drinks, nothing. So you wanted to basically starve them and make them really dry. So they eventually just cave in. Very interesting tactics. Has been done many times in meetings, by the way. And then he began to bail out banks, and the way this worked was basically he had an assistant drawing a list of what the system believes, how much is needed in every bank to recapitalize the bank. And the British finance minister just said to every bank, and you will accept this much from us. You have no choice. That's what happened. It was very interesting. And they had to accept the loans. And they had to accept the partial nationalization. The government just said, we're going to do this now. If not, I don't know how. In what capacity banks could have denied this, you know what I mean, like favors of the guy, I have no clue. But it was literally just by decree, came in and you accept, say, 20 billion, and you accept 50 billion because we believe that's what you need, you know, to stabilize the economy. You just had to accept it, and basically bought shares, right? So they floated shares, and then, you know, got a share, so it was forced onto them, basically.
But there's the US film Too Big to Fail, that's the same.
Yeah, I mean,
That Treasury Secretary said to all these CEOs of banks, you have to take this much money.
you have to take it, that's right.
You have to.
Because because there's this belief that why don't we just let everything default, work everything through it, right? Of course, your pension will go in the process, I'm sure. And my pension, everyone's pension, probably, I don't know what the consequence will be. But at least you start from zero, there's this belief, let's start from zero and write all the loans off and so on and so forth. But whatever the outcome is, no administration, I think, wants to go through this, right? You don't want to be the president whose name is attached to, unleveraging everything, right, and go through this reset, because a lot of wealth will be destroyed, of course. So you keep injecting money for now, anyways. That's your election cycle, of course, right? So be short-term thinking has to do with that too.
You maybe mentioned 200 years later. Great innovator.
Yeah, but no. But I think the next 10 years will be very interesting, so we all might be seeing some change in the world's monetary system.
People start doing it themselves.
Yeah.
In Oregon or something.
Yeah.
Start
I don't know.
trading their own trades, I don't know. Is there
Yeah.
little communities that do that?
The other thing, well, we're approaching 2 o'clock, but the other thing which is interesting to keep in mind, sometimes, because you see, when the Federal Reserve is owned by banks and it's private, it's a federal bank, it's a central bank. So you always have to keep in mind, right, in whose interest is this happening, of course. You have to always ask this question, right, in what interest is this now happening? Why are they doing this rather than that? Okay, so you would think rule of thumb would be, well, those who lend the money, right? Those who hold those shares, right? But to me, the question is right now whether the system is at a point where they can't control it anymore, if you like. I mean, as an example, if you have, say, a country like Greece defaulting, or at least have austerity measures and balancing budgets. There's all these fire sales, of course, right? I mean, can't we know all about it, right? So you put very stringent mechanisms in place, right? And part of it is selling Athens airport or whatever. And it's a fire sale. It's going to go on a fraction of the price of what it's worth, of course. It will be snapped up by investors, of course. Right? So at some point, such a crisis certainly serves certain people. You can buy certain things very cheap. If you believe that it will pay off. But at some point, maybe it needs to be, I don't know if it's getting out of control at some point.
At the beginning, very close to the beginning, you said two things which were inconsistent with each other. Can you remind me what they were?
I mean, the bottom line is that the fiat currency system, fractional reserve banking, which requires the economy to grow, to function, right, is in contradiction to a finite planet on which you can't grow the economy forever. Right? By the way, it's interesting when you say economy, because if you just measure it as GDP per capita, then if you increase if you have inflation, right, if you have money supply increasing, it looks like the economy is growing because GDP per capita is going up, right? So you have to be careful when you say economy. When I say economy, I really mean the goods you can put your hands on. Right? This is what I'm talking about. Not good hyperinflation doesn't mean the economy is growing. But that's what they do in the US, by the way. If you ever ask yourself, how do they come up with quarterly results of how the economy has been doing? Have you ever asked yourself who comes up with a number? They say the United States economy grew last quarter by 0.2%. Who's counting that? Interesting, eh? It's mainly the credit card companies, actually. They report and must report the loans. It's mainly the loans. The bottom line is basically new debts induced into the economy. That's basically how you measure it. Well, if you lose your job, you plan on paying cash, you now swipe the credit card to fill up your card, looks to the credit card company, you grow the economy. Well, you screw your debts back. That's another story.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Matt, that sounds good. You're running Matt like that? That's good. Do you have all your stuff in Matt, or can you do that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, let me show you.
Yeah. I have another one.
Let's see. That's Matt. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for setup.
Sorry?
No, to think about it, it's really interesting, but I'm not sure all that stuff.
And of course, I mean, withdrawing information, right? That's something.
Sorry?
Everyone has access to the information, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, governments have their people, and so they all know the whole story, right? So
Absolutely. I mean, all the graphs, like some of the graphs of the US government, right? Some of these graphs, so it's like, hello.
you wonder, right, how you